This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 2, Episode 39, Cycle Lean with Neil. And I'm your host, Tom Butler. I want to welcome everyone to this week's edition of my journey to bike my way to staying fit later on in life, and the conversations I am having with people that inspire and inform my efforts. I want to talk about something that I did this last week, but I don't want any of you to do it. I am intrigued by the prospect of riding while I am fasting. So this week I rode 48 miles having nothing in the tank. What I mean is that I ate breakfast and then 5 hours later I rode for 4 hours without a meal. I did have a protein snack about 3.5 hours in, but I don't think I actually needed it. I was riding slow and keeping my heart rate at a place that is very low for me. Normally, I would look to maintain about 150 beats per minute for a ride, but for this fasting ride, I was spinning at under 120 beats per minute. One reason why I felt safe riding this way was that I took a couple of protein bars with me and I knew I was able to stop and get more energy if I needed it. I was frequently checking my continuous glucose monitor to make sure I wasn't going too low with my blood glucose level. Again, I recommend that you don't do this. There is a lot that I don't know about riding this way that I want to research. But for me, there was an interesting result. First off, my blood glucose never dropped below 115 milligrams per deciliter, and it fluctuated between 125 and 115, mostly staying about 120. So my blood glucose was actually high the whole time. If it would have slipped down below 100, I would have taken in some calories. My explanation for this is that I was exercising at such a low intensity that my body had no problems converting the fat that I needed for energy. One of the reasons that I don't recommend this to anyone is that I can't find anything that says that going 4 hours without taking in some glucose won't cause the breakdown of protein for energy. I have spent a significant amount of time trying to find a definitive answer to this, and I just can't. However, the body will prioritize burning fat over burning protein for energy, so I think there's reason to believe that I was using fat the whole time. Here is why I will do this again. I've been having problems with blood glucose spikes in the afternoon. That ride totally eliminated an afternoon spike. That is completely predictable. My muscles were burning up the blood sugar so that it didn't spike. However, it also had a huge impact the next day. In fact, the next day was the best blood sugar levels that I have seen since I started wearing the monitor at the beginning of April. The app I use with my continuous glucose monitor gives me a daily score. I have been getting scores in the mid-20s, which isn't good. The day of the ride, I got a score of 72, and the next day a score of 90. That is 2 days with a huge improvement. Because of what I saw with my blood glucose levels, and that I never once felt I was low on energy, I will do the same kind of fasting ride next week and the week after. Then I will take my data to someone who can look at it and advise me whether or not this is a safe weekly strategy. It is possible that I'm doing something that is counterproductive in the long run, like breaking down muscle. One problem I will have, I think, is finding someone who is knowledgeable about what is really happening with a lot of biological processes during a fasting ride like this. I think I need an endocrinologist who is knowledgeable about intermittent fasting and especially the availability of visceral fat utilization for energy. Wish me luck in finding the right expert to really assess the risks of continuing to do this kind of ride. It's rare that I see someone who specifically focuses on cycling as a way to lose weight. So when I saw Neil Damerel's posts, I wanted to get to know more about what he is doing. Neil runs the Cycle Lean community on Facebook, which provides a community for people who want to lose weight while cycling and also don't want to spend hours on a bike. He accepted my invitation to come on the podcast. Here is our discussion. Well, this is a fun time for me, a little bit different of a deal. I'm welcoming Neil Damerel to the podcast. Thank you, Neil, for joining me.
Yeah, pleasure, Tom. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
So, as you can probably make out, Neil is not from my area of the world. And so this is kind of fun because I'm reaching across. I think you're in London, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Yeah, so it's 6 o'clock our time, so in the evening. But it's a nice balance between your time and my time. It's not always that convenient when you're trying to chat to people across the other side of the planet, isn't it? So,
That's right. And thanks
yeah.
to the technology of Zoom, we're able to have this conversation. And that's really cool. You're my first international guest to have on the podcast. So that's kind of fun too. And Neil, I got interested in you because of your YouTube videos and some of the stuff that you have on Instagram. And you talk about weight loss and cycling. And that is something a while ago, as listeners of the podcast know, that I latched on to cycling as a way for me to get my health back. And a lot of my health conditions were about being obese. And so that is a major focus that I have. So I really appreciate you coming on and us having a conversation about those things and some other things as well. And to start out, can you talk about memories that you have of biking as a kid?
Yeah, so definitely growing up, I was more of a football player, definitely in the UK, in England, soccer obviously in America, but is a very you know, growing up is probably what most young kids do, I suppose, in terms of football, especially back in the 80s, 90s. When I grew up, I was born in 82. So growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, football was very much a working class sport. Most people wanted to play sport. So I know cycling has grown in popularity a lot since then, but I think if I was going to go into cycling, that might have been quite a been very different to what majority of my friends were doing, especially my dad, who, I started playing football when I was 5. My dad enjoyed playing football. We're mad Man United fans, so not doing too well at the moment, but I've grown up with that predominantly in my childhood. But in terms of getting into cycling, and cycling was in that age was more about just adventure, just being out on the bike. I did a lot of BMX in a little bit. I did a few BMX events at a local BMX track, and then had like a mountain bike, and just really kind of were just exploring the area I was living in. I remember at the time exploring the area. Now I look back on it, and that area is quite small. But as a kid, you think you've traveled millions of miles and you've gone so far out of your way. Where actually, when I look back on it now, it's probably maybe only 5 miles away from home, for example. So it was more of a case of just getting on my bike, having some adventures. I used to cycle to school as well on the odd occasion and stuff like that. So cycling for me growing up was just the option for transportation, but adventure as well. And that's what I've always probably enjoyed about cycling, just the ability to get explore where you live on your own steam without having to get in a car or having someone sort of take you there as well, really. So yeah.
So your relationship grew with cycling as you became an adult. Can you go into that a bit?
Yeah, so from playing football and predominantly that being my main sport growing up until I became an adult, really around sort of 17, 18, when I had to sort of find my way into the working world. And I left school at 16 and became a hairdresser. So majority of my time, weekends, wasn't playing football, I played Sunday football, and I did hairdressing for about 8 years before I went traveling around the world. So I traveled around Southeast Asia for 6 months, went to Australia, and it was kind of a period of transition for me because I fell out of love with hairdressing a bit. It was a very creative platform, and I've always been very creative, always good with hands-on, and came back after a year traveling, realized I wasn't too fit and healthy after being away for a while. I had a bit of a health scare while I was away. So it really sort of put front of mind the importance of looking after my well-being and really focusing on my health. And I wanted to go back in to study nutrition and exercise and find ways that I could support myself, but also help others. Because while I was away traveling, I learned a lot about nutrition. I did like a detox retreat in Thailand. I spent a month there doing meditation and yoga and really sort of understanding myself a lot better than I did before I left. And that really gave me the inspiration to sort of want to explore that more, go to uni, did a master's degree eventually in sport and exercise nutrition. And my undergrad was focusing on like holistic health and well-being as well and longevity. And then when I came back from traveling, I wanted to get, I was really unfit. I went back playing football and I did pre-season training session and I had to leave the session because I was so unfit. And I'd never done that before because I was always really proud of myself on being really fit. My dad used to take me for runs and he would cycle on the bike while I'd run around, and I'd do that when I was like 11 or 12, just like a couple miles and stuff. And it kind of shocked me how unfit I was. And my dad said, why don't you start running, to and from work, or maybe sign up for a half marathon over the pre-season just to give you something to get your fitness up. So I started running more, did a half marathon. I did one half marathon before I went away traveling. And then the half marathon I did when I came back after doing a bit of training, I knocked off about 15 minutes off my time. So I ran really well and it really inspired me and I got really motivated by it and I wanted to do more. So I did a few more half marathons that summer, went back into playing football, but really didn't really enjoy the football as much as I maybe did in the past, and felt I was getting so much more out of the running because it was all down to me. Where you're playing a team sport, you have to rely on other players giving their 100% as well. And a lot of the time, because we weren't going to be professional anymore, it was kind of just lower league level, sort of semi-pro level where I was playing. So I felt the motivation wasn't always there from every player, but for me, I wanted to always give 100%. So knowing that I could achieve that in running, and that was the only way I could, nothing could get in the way of my own determination and motivation because it was only up to me. So basically, I ended up going into running that season, after that season, and just focusing completely on running. And then it, it wasn't until my brother did his first Ironman triathlon a few years later that I went and supported him. It really inspired me to think, I want to do triathlon. I want to do the running and cycling and swimming. So that's what led me to buying a bike and then sort of getting into the world of Ironman, half Ironman triathlon, Olympic distance triathlon, and then eventually more now into cycling. But that's what really became my passion with cycling, was from running into triathlon. And I really enjoyed the disciplines because it wasn't just running all the time, which sometimes can get a bit monotonous and increase risk of injury as well. And just having the variety of cycling and swimming just really provided a really nice sort of variety in my training. And then that continued, and I went on and did sort of John O'Groats to Land's End and a few other cycling adventures. And at the time when I was doing Ironman and my brother was doing Ironman, this was sort of back in 2006, 2007. So it was still quite a new sport for most people. It didn't have the popularity that it has now, where there's so many Ironman branded events across the world, where at the time it was all relatively new. So no one really, none of my friends were really active in terms of cycling, and now they've got into cycling sort of years later. But I was probably one of the early adopters of, coming home and I've just been out on the bike for 4 hours, or I've just done a half Ironman, and I think I was mental. Where now it's quite normal for most people to go and do that kind of thing. So yes, that's what really sort of my transition really into cycling as an adult, really. And always enjoyed it, obviously, when I was younger and the adventures that I had on it. But that really sort of came back to me when I started getting on the bike a bit more and just being able to go out on my bike. And I grew up in Plymouth in Devon. I don't know if you're familiar with Plymouth in the southwest of England.
No, not very much.
So in the southwest of England, it's very close to, or sort of right next to Dartmoor. So it's a massive national park. You're right by the coast. You have Dartmoor right on your doorstep. So you just have a real good playground to go out and cycle away from the city. It's quite a small city of maybe 250,000 people. So not compared to London, but still, quite a small city. So you could get out quite easily. It's quite hilly as well around Devon and Cornwall. So it's good training for hill climbing. and just a really good way of just getting out of the city and just, I was out on the bike most weekends, most days, as much as I could, training and just go out for hours on my own and just cycle. And that was before Garmin or anything like that. Just, just a stopwatch and just going out and just being out on the bike and maybe having a speedometer to see how many miles you've done. And I think what I really love about it was just the simplicity of it and the freedom that you had from it. And that's all really kind of, I mean, that's really stuck with me now in terms of cycling. That's, I think, what I get the most joy out of it is the really simplicity and how you can explore, travel a big distance, have some adventures, and it's all on your own steam, really, which is good. And you're in nature, and that's, what I love, being in nature as often as possible. So yeah.
When you say that, it does sound like there was a beautiful place to ride, that you were getting out, you were doing the miles, you're burning some calories, using your body, but then also it sounds like a beautiful place. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about that. Do you find being out in nature calms you down? Do you find that there's some health benefits to you just from being outside in a beautiful scenery?
Oh, massively, especially growing up in a city like Plymouth, where you do have the coast and, really good countryside on your doorstep. I think when I was younger, I probably didn't appreciate it as much as you probably do at the time, or you should do at the time. And obviously, as I've got older and living in London for nearly 10 years now, I still get out to the countryside, quite close to Kent and the Surrey Hills, so we can get out to the countryside from London. It takes maybe about, from where I've moved more central now, so probably takes me a bit longer to get out, but just, I think, me going out in the countryside and doing a regular ride most weekends has actually made me manage my health and mental well-being as a Londoner now probably a lot easier than maybe most people. I've spoken to a lot of people, and they feel like they never leave the city. They feel quite compressed on them. Where, because I've always got out in the countryside, I've spent 4 or 5 hours, around the country lanes, beautiful countryside, bit of fresh air, so away from the smog maybe of London, and it just really revitalizes you. And I know there's a lot of science now with sort of called forest bathing, which helps to increase your immunity, improve your immune system. Because obviously there's science behind it, maybe more people are more conscious of it. But I think the more you connect with nature in generally on a daily basis or as often as possible, that's where we're truly at home. I think as humans, I think we do live in quite a manufactured world now in cities, and how we kind of go about our daily lives. So the more you can kind of maybe disconnect from that, I think mentally, for your mental well-being and physically for your well-being, it's always going to be a benefit. I think you'll handle the challenges of sort of more modern life a little bit easier by doing so. Yeah.
You talked about going to Thailand. Sounds like that you were really looking at a holistic aspect of being healthy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So when I was in Thailand, we spent 6 months traveling around Southeast Asia, and then there was a period where I end up accidentally overdosing on like marijuana while I was there. So I wasn't a person who was doing drugs, but it was just one of those things that you tried while we were over there, and it was called a happy shake at the time. So you just had a smoothie, but we digested it. It was too strong for all of us. We were all violently sick, end up going to the toilet in the middle of the night and then falling over and banging my head on sort of a tiled bathroom floor. And lucky enough, my friends woke up as I was heading to the toilet, but I swallowed my tongue in the process, and my friend had to remove my tongue because I was going blue and suffocating. So end up in hospital for a night, and yeah, it was quite a traumatic experience. I was 22 at the time, so it was really sort of a big wake up call of not to really just I suppose take advantage of your body and think you're invincible, which you kind of feel like you are at that age, I suppose. And then sort of that was in Laos, and then we spent a few more months, and we had a period of time where my friend, his partner, came over to see him for a couple of weeks. So me and my three friends, we all went our separate ways for a couple of weeks, and that was my opportunity to go to this detox retreat in Koh Samui. And I heard about it before I went traveling, so it's something I was always sort of keen to explore. And did 10 days detox, sort of basically fasted for 10 days, bit of colonic irrigation and meditation, yoga, speaking to different people, reading about nutrition. And then my friends met up again after a couple of weeks, and I said to them, I'm going to stay for another 2 weeks. So I stayed for a whole month instead of 2 weeks, and just really enjoyed being in the environment, doing yoga, eating really nice food, like vegan food, and just kind of sort of immersing myself in that kind of environment and sort of I suppose it was the start of like the healing process for me to be a better person, be healthier, and see how I could then pass it on to other people and sort of work on my mental well-being as well as physical well-being. So it was just a really nice sort of environment where everything sort of comes together to make things easier for you. And then that kind of inspired me to sort of continue that once I got home back to the UK. So yeah.
So, did you see that as a divergence from when you were a kid, or was there always in your family kind of this focus on healthy eating and nutrition and meditation? Did you kind of go in that with a foundation from your family, or was that kind of a departure from how you were raised?
Yeah, it's very different, really. I think growing up, my mum cooked a bit, but it was never really like cooking good meals, I suppose. Now I look back on it, I think we had a really nice upbringing, great family. I got a younger sister as well. So we always had food, but probably I would come home a lot of the time and my mum would have like a sticky bun ready for me from the bakery. So I'd have that before dinner. And then I was a really active kid playing football all the time. So I never really had an issue with weight, but I probably wasn't the healthiest in terms of the food I was putting in my body. And especially when I was in my early adult years as a hairdresser, I would socialize a lot. I'd probably drink 3 or 4 nights a week, going out partying. And in the UK, we're quite known for binge drinking. So that was sort of the culture back in the 90s as well. So that was obviously a part of my upbringing as well. And, a great way of building social connection with people and creating friendships and stuff. But I don't drink anymore. I've been sober for 4 years, and I know my relationship with alcohol is a lot healthier, and I know how I used alcohol essentially when I was younger more as a motivation or kind of a masking agent to give me confidence to speak to women, or just I was quite shy as a kid growing up, so naturally helped me probably overcome that shyness a bit. And being a hairdresser also kind of allowed me to be more outgoing and connect with more people. And but alcohol was certainly, a drug to overcome those insecurities more than actually, oh, I'm just drinking socially because I enjoy a drink. I'm doing it because it's going to help me with this and this and this. It wasn't necessarily the healthiest way of using the substance for example. Yeah.
So then you go and you study nutrition and wellness, well-being, and I'm sure that just added to kind of your growth process. And then you go on and get a master's degree. I think it's easy to tell that you're a competitive person with a master's degree in sports nutrition. If there's a compelling element there of helping other people compete at their best.
Absolutely. I've always been someone growing up that has been very hard on oneself. So one of the earliest memories is my mum told me that I used to draw and sketch a lot, and that was a passion of mine, is being artistic. And anytime I made a mistake, instead of rubbing it out, I would throw it away and start again because I wanted it perfect. So, and growing up playing football, if we lost as a team, I would probably blame myself for the loss as opposed to being a collective loss. So that would wear heavily on me unless even if I played well, I'd maybe focus on the 1 or 2 mistakes maybe I made in the game as opposed to the other 90% that I did well. So I've always been something that's been sort of overly critical, but that's kind of eased a little bit as I've become more conscious of that and more aware of it and more, kinder to myself as I've grown up. But certainly the driving force of understanding my health individually was a driving force to then pass it on to other people and really feel like I make a difference, because being a hairdresser and going into the customer service industry, my job was always to make people feel better. So, and that's what I got the biggest reward from. So, someone come in for a haircut and they left feeling really good with a smile on their face, that was my biggest, buzz for the day. It wasn't necessarily a financial reward. It was more of, I just want people to feel happy. And I've always had a passion of, if I really enjoy my job and I make people feel happy, then I'm happy myself in my job. I've never been there's multiple ways obviously of going into different careers, but maybe some certain people's motivation might be different, but mine's always been, I want to be happy in my job. I want to feel good in what I do every day. So when I didn't enjoy hairdressing as much, it was a time to change into something that I was again passionate about, and I found my way in nutrition, helping people, and being sport, being active, and being into sport myself. It was just a natural progression of, I really enjoy this. I want to do this as a passion, help people, and seeing people, clients of mine in the past and clients now achieve results, and that's my biggest reward that I get every week when I speak to my clients, that they enjoy, getting the results based on the support that I'm helping them with. I think that's, always been my calling really, is just to try and make a difference in whatever way possible, even if that's maybe just someone just thanking me for a post I put out on social media that they've got some value from. I think that's what I've always really sort of been, my biggest driver, is just helping as much as I can, helping people as much as I can, whether that was, enjoying a nice haircut or just feeling better in themselves. And I know how much, I suppose, I've got from improving my health and how that's changed my life, not just in a physical way, but in a mental way, and relationships, and just my whole lifestyle change has been huge because of the sort of habits I've adopted and worked on. And I think because I've seen the benefits, I know the benefits are there for people, and it's just trying to help them uncover it. Everybody has that potential, and it's just a case of helping them peel away a few layers to realize that for themselves, and seeing them realize that potential, and then being motivated to then live a more fulfilled life, but also then they get to pass it on to other people as well. So for me, it's that educational process that people then can have the tools and the skills to then inspire other people, and that then goes on and on, doesn't it? So yeah.
There's a lot of information out there about nutrition and about, sports nutrition, Instagram and YouTube. Do you think people are pretty well educated, or do you find that you're introducing a lot of new principles to people when you're meeting with them?
I think generally there's just too much confusion in the media now. So there's so many people vying for people's attention that they're going to the extremes in order to create attention, maybe to sell their product or to get more eyeballs on their product or whatever they're trying to promote. But I think the basic principles of nutrition hasn't really changed that much. There's a lot of new science out there in terms of sports performance, and that's changed quite a lot from the time when I've sort of started in endurance sports. So that's changed a lot. So the science and that has progressed and moved on quite considerably. But the overall principles of just living a healthy life, maintaining a healthy weight, I think are very, very basic and quite simple. Obviously, that's easy for me to say. A lot of people might feel that's confusing, but I think if we could just strip it back and make it as simple as possible, those other layers that you add on top are just bonuses. And if you can really sort of build a good, strong foundation of your nutritional habits that are simple, sort of really basic, based on sort of old principles that we had years and years ago. During the war, we were probably one of the healthiest that we were, because we were just eating sensibly, eating food that was available to us. We didn't really have much processed food available to us. We weren't eating food that was out of season. We're just eating within season. So I think the more you can kind of keep it as close to nature as possible and keep it close to your environment, obviously minimize packaged food, processed food as much as possible, then you're going to be onto a winner in the long way. And there's multiple ways of maybe enhancing that with different foods and different supplements, but they're always going to be little bonuses that you probably add on top. But you need to sort of work on your foundations and make sure you get the basics right first, and keep those basics consistent, just like exercise. Just keep doing the things that are good for you, but just keep doing them regularly, and then you'll definitely see the benefits in the long run. So
Talk about being focused on people who are over 40 years old. I'm feel very confident that if somebody that was 25 came to you and said, "Hey, can you give me some advice? Can you work with me?" You wouldn't say no. You're out of my
yeah.
age group. I'm not going to have anything to do with you. But what has caused you to focus on that age group?
Predominantly, mainly for probably, for myself, I'm 41 now. And I think from that age, especially what changed for me is that there's a mental shift in terms of how maybe you look at your health at that age compared to 25. So, I've got clients or people that are in my free group that are under 40, and that's fine. They're going to be 40 eventually, aren't they? So, but I think if they can learn some principles of longevity at a younger age, that's going to give them a bigger head of start comparison to if they were just starting at 40. And I think, when I was in my early 20s, and maybe this is maybe a sweeping statement, but maybe from what I see on social media, people's agenda in terms of what they're aiming for in their 20s is maybe more performance based, maybe more how they look in that sense as well. It might be more physical based in terms of I want to pack on a lot of muscle in order to look a certain way. I know when I was younger, I was quite conscious of my body and wanted to build more muscle in order to feel like that was going to attract more women. But that that's just me being insecure. It wasn't doesn't that's not fact, is it? That's not going to happen, is it? And also I think at that age as well, you can get away with a little bit more in terms of pushing your body to the limit. So in my 20s, before I was 30, I did an Ironman, a few marathons, trying to go to Land's End. I did some quite big challenges where I could do those now, but I know there's a high risk of injury if I push my body to do that. And also, as life changes, when I was in my 20s, I didn't have any responsibilities. I was at university, had the free time to be able to do those extra hours of training, where now I live with my partner, obviously got a full-time job. So you're trying to sort of manage your health around other challenges that you didn't have when you were younger. So I think as I've got older, and that's why I wanted to work with more people my age and above, because it's trying to navigate those challenges in a healthy way that's going to extend your life, still get the most out of your passion that is cycling, and also benefit your health in the long way. So, because the principles that you would use when you're younger are definitely going to change when you're older, because you might be able to train 10, 15 hours a week when you're 25, but can you do that when you're 45? I think it's very different. So, but you can still get real big benefits from the exercise and still perform at your best, and what you are capable of doing above 40. You just have to really prioritize a few different factors like rest, recovery, prioritize your sessions a bit more, look at your time management a bit differently to maximize the gains that you do have from the time you have available, as opposed to think I just need to go riding all the time. Where when you're younger, you probably think I've got all these hours in a day, I can just go riding and spend hours on my bike. Where you have to be a little bit more considerate about the hours that you do spend, and are they going to be a benefit to you, or if they're not a benefit to you, what things can you do differently? Because it's really about sort of maximizing that time spent that you do have to benefit you in the best way possible.
41 was 20 years ago for me.
Yeah.
And, I look at that, and one of the things that it's interesting to me about a focus on 40 years old and older is that I think there was a point somewhere around 40. It might have been 38, but somewhere around 40, there was a point that if I would have made changes at that time, then I would have not had to work so hard as I'm working now in order to reverse some of the metabolic conditions that I've developed. So I see 40s as being a time where I was out of that mindset that, oh, this is easy for me to, I've gained 5 pounds and it's easy for me to take it off. 40, it started becoming a little harder to take weight off. And, I started, thinking about, okay, I'm feeling a little bit older in my 40s, whereas younger than that, I didn't, I wasn't really feeling that old. I had stopped cycling somewhere in my 30s, and I would still jump on my bike and go to the library with my daughter or go to a coffee shop, but really putting in some long rides that stopped. Again, if I would have stayed with things, if I would have made specific changes in my 40s, then again, a lot of the challenges that I have right now, I just don't think would be there.
You make a very good point. And I think that's one of my passions of working with people from 40 and above as well, because I think it's a real transition for most people at that age that are I'm now middle age. So psychologically, sometimes there's a factor of like, I can't do what I used to do 20 years ago. And also the commitments that you might have. I've got a lot of friends that, have got families. So you've got a lot of commitments that takes up a lot more of your time. So for most people, family and everyone else comes first and your health comes last, unfortunately, sometimes. But for me, it's a real passion of how you can still prioritize what's important in life, but also prioritize yourself, which is the number one. For me, health is the number one thing in your life. You should prioritize that first because that will benefit everyone else around you and benefit you. And I think it's kind of helping men and women above 40 to look at how they can still have a really healthy and life that's full of adventure and energy after 40 and not feel that 40 is like the slippery slope down to 80 where we're just going to be struggling when we're older. I feel you can still have a trajectory going forward that's going to maintain independence as you get older, still be able to cycle when you're 18, 19, still have adventures, still be independent, still have a sort of zest for life and adventure because you've adapted those habits early on and made that sort of a non-negotiable within your lifestyle that then allows you to sort of really just maximize your life. Because for me, as I get older, my passion for myself and others is I want to be living my life and to the day I die. I don't want to be just existing. And there's a lot of research now that it's called a disability life lost years. This is in the UK anyway. It's saying that on average, people lose about 5 to 10 years of disability life lost years, which is, they die at 80, but from 70 to 80, they might have a few health conditions that have meant they're immobile or they're in a home or they need some care in some way. So it's trying to mitigate that and make sure that you don't need care. You can look after yourself and still enjoy your life and go and do things. And you might be a little bit slow on the bike, but you can still certainly get out and enjoy it. I think that's the key thing is for me is establishing those good habits. So life is going to be easier as you get older, as opposed to being maybe more challenging if you don't do it.
Yeah, there's so many things that I want to take off on things that you're saying. We could be here for 4 hours. I think I don't think you signed up for that. So,
That's,
you know,
I'm happy to do a part two if we want to.
okay,
I enjoy having a chat. It's good.
nice. We might end up doing that. Do you see cycling as particularly a good activity for weight loss?
It's interesting because I talk a lot about that on my socials and the content I put out because obviously exercise or cycling is a cardiovascular exercise, and a lot of people feel they need to do some form of cardio in order to lose weight. But I think if you just think of cycling as a way to lose weight, I think you're missing the principle of basic nutrition and managing your calorie intake. It's not going to be the secret sauce that's going to help you lose weight. You could go for a run, you could go for a swim. It's still some form of cardiovascular exercise where you're going to be burning calories. I think if you enjoy cycling and it's a passion and you want to do it because you love the adventures that you can get from it and you enjoy being outside and you enjoy the challenges it can take, use cycling for that aspect first. Don't rely on it as a weight loss thing because the way I frame it is that I love sitting on the turbo trainer for a couple of hours, but I would hate to sit on a row machine for 2 hours. I hate the row machine. So I could do 10 minutes and that's about enough and I'm off. So they both achieve the same principles in terms of burning calories, but I enjoy the cycling more than the other. So I'm going to do the cycling more often than the rowing machine. But if someone said you can only go on the rowing machine, then I'll probably give up quite quickly and not continue with it. So I think if you really love cycling, then use it because you love cycling, and then obviously you're going to help burn calories, improve your cardiovascular health from the cardiovascular exercise you're going to get. But it's down to how you feel on and off the bike that's going to really make the biggest amount of difference. Obviously, if your job is quite sedentary, adding in any form of extra physical activity is going to be a benefit as well. So I think we need to move more, and if that's being out on the bike, whether that's commuting to and from work or going for a weekend ride with your cycling club, they're all going to increase the amount of activity you do on a weekly basis, which is always going to be a bonus. So I think if you look at it like that, that's probably going to be a healthier way than just thinking about trying to, you know, cycle to burn loads of calories, and hopefully that will help you lose weight. Yeah, I think that's the best way.
I think that's well put for me. To me, I guess the biggest part of it is it's a compliance thing. Like you said, there's so many things that I could be doing, even walking. I mean, walking is easy to do, but I just find that if I go for a walk, I go a certain distance. If I go for the same amount of time on a bike, I'm just way past that distance and I'm just seeing more.
Mm.
For me, it is the thing that helps me go from being sedentary to having some calories burned in my day.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. There is an innate sort of childlike element to being on a bike as well, which I always find kind of never really goes away. Like I remember when you start learning to ride and the thrill of being able to ride a bike. When I was younger, we had a little driveway and my dad would put a little ramp on it, and I would, bomb down it and then jump off the ramp and think I was going to hit the garage roof. And my mum was like, "You're only like 1 foot off the ground." But I just, it's just, I just love it, So I think when I get out on the bike, and especially when I get out on my nice summer bike, which is, carbon wheels and carbon frame, and you just whizzing down on smooth tarmac, and it's like, you're like, oh, this is, feels like you feel like a kid, don't you? Like, oh, this is amazing. You get a little like buzz, and so I think the joy of that aspect just kind of brings that childlike sort of joy out in you as well, which I think you don't really get from anything else. I don't think you get that from running or walking, but I think from cycling, I think that's why cycling is so enjoyable for so many people, because it has that sort of childlike, sort of nostalgia to it. So I suppose, and that sort of that memory that comes back um, of how you learned to ride a bike when you're younger and stuff. So
Do you think that there are things that people need to know before jumping on a bike as part of a weight management program? If there's someone that hasn't been cycling very much.
yeah, I suppose if they've cycled from a young age and had a period where they've not cycled, hopefully they've learned to ride a bike, and that's the key principle. They can still ride a bike. And I think just look at how you can maybe incorporate cycling into your sort of lifestyle in the most easiest way possible. If a lot of people, especially in London, have started to pick up cycling as a form of commuting, especially a lot since COVID, the infrastructure has increased. So there's a lot more cycle lanes that make it safer for everybody to commute. So more availability of hire bikes as well for people. So I think that if you can sort of start using cycling as a form of activity to commute, and then as you start getting into exploring and want to do longer rides, then you've already got sort of maybe a good base of fitness based on your commuting, as opposed to just jumping into like a cycling club. If you've never cycled, I think that can feel quite intimidating if you've never really had much experience and you're trying to build your fitness. And I think if you could just start going out on little rides, get comfortable on the bike, get comfortable with your surroundings, looking out for traffic and all those kind of things, I think that's a really good way of just starting out on the bike before you jump in with a big group of people, where you've got to watch the wheel and be conscious of other things as well. And obviously your fitness level will increase, so also you got to be factor that into it, because if you go out with a group and you've not really done much exercise, that could put you off quite easily, because you might not be able to catch up, and you feel sort of disheartened that your fitness level is not as good as other people around you. So it could be an easy way of sort of not carrying on. A lot of people go to the gym and see so many other people really fit, they feel intimidated to go back again. So I think if you can spend a lot of time just on your own, that will help build a lot more confidence. I had a friend who was quite new to cycling, and she just started cycling in order to commute. I helped her sort of get used to the clip-on pedals and stuff like that. And then eventually she got more confident by commuting, and then used to go out on the bike on longer rides with me. And then she did a sportif as well, off the back of that. So, but that all stemmed from just getting on the bike and using it to commute, save a bit of money on transport. But also, this is a nice way of getting to and from work, especially in the summer months. It's a nice way of unwinding after a hard day as well. So I think that's probably the best way, the best route in, I would say, as opposed to just jumping into a club, just to build confidence, build some fitness, and gradually increase where you want to go from there. You might find that's all you want to do, but then you might have might get a bug for it and feel I want to explore other options that might be available to me as well. So yeah.
You've used the term sportive a couple
Yeah.
times. I don't know what that means.
Okay. So sportif in the UK is like 100 mile, 50 mile sort of. A sportif is kind of a race, but not a race. So
Okay.
it's a charity event or a cycling event that you can do, but it's not a race. So I can go and I'm doing a sportif at the end of May, Ride London 100. That is not a race, but a lot of people will try and race it and get a good time. But there's no prizes for first or second or last. It's just a challenge that people can sign up for and have a go and you know see how quickly they can do it for their own personal goals. Yeah, that's all it is.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I imagine that everybody needs to have a program that's somewhat tailored to them as an individual. But I'm wondering if there are some overall principles, kind of some basic principles that you give people to get started with losing weight.
Yeah, we do have obviously everybody will be an individual based on what goals they have, what their starting point is, what they're aiming for, how, quickly, I won't say quickly, it's not a case of trying to lose weight quickly, it's about how they might have a goal in mind in terms of where they would like to get to by a certain time, if they've got any things coming up. But I think the principles for everyone really when it comes to nutrition will be make sure one, you're really well hydrated every day. Probably still a lot of people don't drink enough water on a daily basis. So, and also add in some electrolytes within that as well to help hydrate your body more efficiently. I think definitely start your day. I start my day with a liter of water before I even get out of bed. So I think if you can set yourself up well, then the more hydrated you are, eating healthier will be easier. You're probably going to snack less if you're more hydrated. And then, make sure you're having good amounts of fruits and vegetables, plenty of fiber. Most people in the UK, especially, don't hit 30 grams of fiber a day, which is a recommended daily allowance. Probably get like 10, 15 grams, but that's really important for to keep you full for longer, helps lower your risk of bowel cancer. Really important. So plenty of fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, a minimum 5 a day, 10 a day is what's optimum that we should be aiming for. And then good, cuts of lean protein, fish, oily fish as well. So you've got good omega-3 sixes, and just minimize your saturated fat in your diet, which is generally from your processed foods, your meat, cheese, and chocolate, um, you know, sweets, all those kind of things, dairy. So I think they're not bad for you. It's just making sure the majority of your fats come from your mono and polyunsaturated fats, which would be your nuts, avocados, oily fish, those kind of things, and then base that around some other good lean cuts of meat, chicken, a steak from time to time. It's not going to do you any harm. I think it's just a case of look at how much you're having it in comparison to the other foods you consume. And I think if you can have those basics well, then it will make dieting a bit easier or just losing weight easier. I always advise all my clients to make sure like half your plate is vegetables at every meal. So you're increasing the amount of nutrient dense calories that you've got rather than calorie dense calories. So it's called like volume eating, where you're just building a lot more, you're having a lot more on your plate for less calories. So, you know, it could be 500 calories of vegetables, but 500 calories could be one chocolate bar. So like the difference in terms of you can still be hungry after the chocolate bar in comparison to eating a big bowl of vegetables, won't you? So it's kind of focusing on making sure you're having those principles at play. And then just making sure you're in a calorie deficit. You do have to be in a calorie deficit off the bike. I'm not talking about on the bike because that's very different. But just make sure your calories are in a healthy relationship to what you do on a day-to-day basis. Because even though we cycle a lot. We might go on the bike for an hour a day or go for a long ride at the weekends for 2 or 3 hours. The majority of our day, for most people, like myself and yourself, are probably sedentary. We've sat down most of the day anyway. So that 1 hour in the day is only 1 hour 24, and we spent 8 hours of the day asleep. So that's 8 hours lying down and being sedentary again. So the calorie requirements for our day on a day-to-day basis, even if we're training for an hour, maybe isn't as high as you might think it is. So I think if you can be conscious of that, if you're certainly looking to lose weight, and then focus on how you fuel well while riding, which is a completely different topic. But in terms of just weight loss, those principles are the key ones really to help your weight come down. And also sleep as well is a big factor. If you're sleeping well, all those principles will be easier to adhere to, because if you're not sleeping well, your appetite hormone ghrelin is going to increase. So you're going to be hungry more often, which is going to make it harder for you to kind of control the calories that you consume on a day-to-day basis. So if you can prioritize your sleep, managing your calorie intake and your food choices, will be a lot easier to adhere to in the future.
You talk about good sleep. I think that's an element of good recovery as well, right? I know that you focus on recovery. Can you talk a bit about that? How important is recovery, and how do you kind of know when you need to recover, things like that?
I think that's one of the biggest factors. I think I spend a lot of time talking to with clients of 40 and above, because obviously our recovery is more compromised as we get older. We can't recover as quickly as we could have done when we were 20, 25. So I think making sure you prioritize a lot of that within your training on a weekly basis is really important. And that could be a recovery bike session. So on a Monday, for example, I always do a really easy spin. So I did a hard ride on Saturday. I'm probably still feeling a bit fatigued from that today, but today was a zone two. But Monday was a recovery, so low heart rate and just spinning my legs, so I wasn't even really working up a sweat. It was just a way of just keeping my body used to being on the bike, flushing the toxins out, removing a bit of lactic acid buildup. And, that if a recovery ride, for a lot of people, don't always, they say they do a recovery ride, but they're still out of breath maybe, or it's not as easy as it should be. A lot of people think a recovery ride maybe is a low zone two, which it can be depending on how you're training. But I think for some people, a recovery ride, because they don't feel like they're working out, they don't enjoy it. And I need to get a sweat on to feel like I've done something. But actually, it has a principle within the grander scheme of your training platform in terms of where you want to go. You have to give your body that chance to replenish and those muscles to grow and get stronger. And they can only get stronger by good sleep, resting, and giving your body the right nutrients to do so. Because if you're just training all the time, hoping to get stronger and not giving your body the recovery time, that's just going to lead to a decline in your fitness. You might plateau, likely to burn out, overtrain, and not reach the goals you're aiming for, because you're trying to reach, you're trying to be too aggressive in terms of how you're going to get there. And you recovery as well can be in the form of active recovery. So going for a walk, that's how I spend my Sundays, is going for a nice walk for a few hours. So keeping the body moving, but just keeping the intensity nice and low, keeping the heart rate down. So it's just looking at your heart rate variability and managing that, and making sure that if your heart rate needs to be in a recovery zone. You can't expect your heart rate to be high and get good recovery from it. So and sleep is a real key factor in that. If professional athletes sleep 10 hours a night more sometimes, because they know how important it is to prime their body for the next day's training. If you're not sleeping well, your training is going to get harder in order to be able to continue on a consistent basis. So yeah, I think if you can prioritize those factors, it will make it a lot easier to see the improvements you're aiming for in your program. And a lot of my clients, I have to tell them to cycle less because they're doing too much and they're feeling tired all the time. And if you're feeling tired all the time and you're looking to lose weight, which most of my clients are, that's also going to be a challenge, because the more tired you are from exercise, your appetite hormone goes up again. So you're going to be increasing your calories where you want to be decreasing your calories to lose weight. So it's also going to make your goal of losing weight harder if you're not recovering and overtraining and doing too much. Yeah, so it plays a massive role in terms of performance, but also your weight loss goals and just overall well-being as well. In terms of, I think, your longevity in the sport, in terms of, do you want to keep doing this for 20 to 30 years, or is it just a short window where you're training for an event and then you're gonna, not cycle anymore? So yeah.
The difference between going out and just spinning, going very low intensity, difference between that, doing that for an hour and sitting on the couch and doing nothing for an hour has got to be huge. When you get out there and you feel like I'm not doing any work, I'm just kind of, going at a really slow pace. I'm getting passed on the trail by everybody on their bikes. It's like it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, but again, that difference of just spinning, of just going along, that's got to be huge compared to just sitting and doing nothing.
Yeah, I think, from a psychological point of view as well, it's really important because I think if I go off my own example, for example, so on the weekend, I'm doing Ride London, which is a 100-mile sportif at the end of May. So I wanted to get a few more miles in my legs. So I did a 85-mile ride at the weekend. And that was on my own as well. I didn't have anybody who came out with me. Everybody decided to stay in because it was a bit chilly. So, but I was quite tired off the back of that. So Monday I could have easily stayed at home and I do all my training in the morning. So I could have easily stayed in bed and not bothered going to the gym. But the recovery sessions for me have been a real key factor into like building momentum again for the next week's worth of training. Because if I hadn't done that, my recovery wouldn't be as efficient the next day. And I think just spinning your legs psychologically, your heart rate is going up a little bit. So you just feel a bit more energized from the exercise itself. You feel better because you've actually done something. You've got your body moving. Your legs feel a little bit looser because you've actually done some recovery and you've got the blood flow going through the muscles again to help repair the muscles and make things a bit easier in terms of that process. So if you just do nothing, you can feel quite stiff and sluggish. And when you do go back on the bike and you want to ride quite strong, you're probably going to struggle to be able to sort of get to that sort of pace that you want to be at as quickly as you would have been able to if you've done the recovery ride. I think and the recovery rides on a turbo trainer is what I do, and it's a lot easier to do it on a turbo trainer because I can just sit and watch YouTube video for an hour and just chill out and relax. And it's a nice way of just, using my time efficiently rather than sitting on the couch watching TV. I can just sit on the bike and watch TV. So I'm doing the same thing, but just aiding my body in a good way as opposed to just putting my feet up, So yeah.
Yeah. I imagine I'm not the only one that has ever mentioned this issue, but I have a real problem with snacking. Now, a lot of times I'll get busted on my way to snacking by my wife who is in the kitchen, and reminds me, do you really need what you're eating right now? But how do you advise people when it comes to snacking?
I mean, snacking is innate part of our culture these days with the food system, and we're encouraged to snack based on the that's being produced and that we have available and advertised to us. So I think generally, I don't think if you should feel guilty for snacking, and certainly it is a big part of my day on a daily basis as well. But I think it's to how you view it and how your relationship with food is. And I think there's multiple ways of managing snacking, and because actually that's probably where most people's extra calories come from in their day. You could easily add 500 calories to your daily calorie consumption just off snacking alone. So if you're looking to lose weight, which on general is going to be 500 calorie deficit per day to lose 1 or 2 pounds per week, it's an easy way of saving those calories by not snacking and just having three main meals. So if you're looking to manage your weight better, then certainly having less snacks or none at all is a good way of doing it. And one of the key ones we've talked about before is hydration. A lot of time people snack because they're not drinking enough. We a lot of time mistake hunger for thirst, and we're gravitating towards food to hydrate, because we do get hydration from food as well, like fruits and vegetables and stuff. So we're kind of searching for like a pick me up in that way. So one, make sure you stay hydrated. If you feel like a snack attack coming on, then just have a glass of water or drink some more water until that suppresses. And if you, that should give you a little bit more time to kind of think about, I don't really need a snack now. I feel okay because I've had a bit of water. So it might just delay your choice, and that choice then might lead into lunchtime. So you might remove one snack. I would say another option as well, like snacking, you could obviously look at snacking on healthier options. Try and have some fruit available that's available to you, maybe some hummus with some vegetables, those kind of things. So, and you can also look for different options that can help. And also you can also look at play around with your meals. I found myself I'm a big breakfast eater, and I enjoy a big bowl of porridge in the morning and a big lunch. I don't really have a big dinner. So, but I found the bigger my meals are, the less I need to snack because I'm focusing on just getting all my calories in on my three main meals really. So again, that's a good way of making sure that you have less options or less desire to snack. And then one of the biggest changes that's probably helped me, and I think a lot of people don't really look at as much, is just your relationship with food and like the psychological element of why you snacking. I think a lot of people don't stop to think about that and think more about just out of, oh, I want a snack because I'm tired. But I think it's good to question, why are you tired? And you might not have slept well the night before, or so then, oh, I'm tired. I'm snacking because I'm tired. Okay, I need better sleep. So I think all those kind of things will help you to improve certain other areas in your life that can help minimize snacking as well. And one of the biggest factors for me, I think, with snacking is mainly because I'm bored, or maybe it's just out of habit. I think a lot of those factors are habits, are things that you can change as well. A lot of time it's like, am I bored or am I stressed? Sometimes if I'm stressed, then I might gravitate to a chocolate bar and stuff like that. So, so understanding that relationship with food, I think, is really important. And if it's, because of stress, then how are you managing that? What kind of things are you doing to manage that? What are you stressed about? Have you kind of looked at the root cause of that? And if, you're tired, obviously your sleep, is it out of habit? Is it just something that you do? How can you change those habits in a positive way? And a lot of people snack in the office because everyone snacks and people bring in snacks. So again, it's a culture thing that you have to try and change, which is a lot more challenging because you certainly have less control of that. So there's a lot of ways that you can improve snacking, and I think it will be based on the individual and working with the individual to help them understand that. But if you can sort of work and spend some time on yourself to understand it, should make it a little bit easier. And I think the last point I would make is I used to probably snack a lot because I was maybe anxious or stressed. And since I've worked on that and I don't feel as anxious or stressed, I don't need food to make me feel better. So because I feel better in myself and happier in myself than maybe I would have done, say, 10 years ago, I can go and have a chocolate as a snack after lunch, but it's a couple cubes and that's it. Where 10 years ago, I'd eat the whole bar and feel sick and then, feel guilty and, be have bad thoughts about myself and think I've failed myself and then not eat chocolate for about a month and then do the same thing again. So, I think just by learning about my own happiness internally and working on that with, meditation, meeting my partner and open conversations with, people. And that's helped me a lot more in terms of I don't need to eat all of this to fulfill a hole that's maybe was lacking before because I've kind of, you know, fulfilled that hole with, working on myself and looking at other ways to manage that, with other elements that's going on within my environment and my life at the time. I think that's a big factor for a lot of people as well, which if you work on that is, I think, probably the biggest game changer for me anyway, that's happened in my life is more self work makes me reach for snacks left often and other factors in life, like it's a way of distracting ourselves from maybe the uncomfortable things that we might have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's really interesting that there are some real psychological things going on when it comes to snacking. And like you're saying, now you have a YouTube channel, and I wonder if you could talk about your YouTube channel and kind of what impact you would like to have by putting up the content that you put up.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, it's just under Neil Damrell MSc. I probably need to change that to make it more cycling focused, maybe to draw in a few more viewers and subscribers, maybe. But yeah, the main thing is just putting out educational content around cycling with, the people that I work with, obviously helping men and women over 40 lose weight, gain strength without feeling they have to spend hours riding their bike. So making it efficient around their work and home lives. And what I'm trying to do with the channel is having it as a platform that people can get educated. They've got good resources. They can learn from my experience. I share my own experience quite a lot on the channel as well. So then people can understand that I've also been a beginner as well and learned the hard way and, helped to improve my performance quite significantly by adopting the principles that I now help others do. And also trying to maybe in the future look at doing more adventure videos. I've played around with a few adventure videos where I've been out cycling and filming myself on the bike and doing some sporty. Where I did the Dragon Ride, which was a 203-kilometer bike ride in Wales with like 10,000 feet of climbing and stuff like that. So, yeah, trying to maybe have a few more adventures on the channel where I'm sharing my own experience and how I'm getting on and the ups and downs of those sportives that can be quite challenging at times as well. So yeah, it's trying to make it more fun and engaging, an opportunity for people to come and learn as well, and not being too serious, but at the same time feel that people get value from it, whether that's in a educational sense or an entertainment sense. I think that's the main goal for me. So
In addition to the YouTube channel, if someone wanted to reach out to you and have you do some coaching with them, you have a website.
just head to neildamrell.com, so www.neildamrell.com, and you'll have all my social media links on there. I'm under Neil Damrell on Instagram and on LinkedIn and also Facebook as well. Got our own community, the Cycle Lean community, which is free to join on Facebook as well, where we provide support, educational seminars on a maybe monthly basis. If people got questions, I tend to do a live video answering their question to support them as well, which also helps support other people in the community as well. So people can join that for free, which then again, they can also learn about my services and, how I support my clients within that community as well. And obviously, you can reach out to me and ask me any questions if they've got anything. And always happy to lend some support if anyone's got any questions as well. So feel free to ask any questions no matter what. Anybody that follows me on Instagram, I'm always saying hi. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to help. So yeah, I'm always looking to try and get to know my audience and engage with them as much as I can as well, and try and build a nice community to help as many people as possible. So yeah.
Well, I would recommend people go to the YouTube channel. I'll put links in the show notes so people can go there. Check out the lot of content, and you're doing a good job of producing content. I don't produce videos, because it's harder. So good on
Yeah.
you for doing that. Well, Neil, thank you so much for coming on. I didn't get to all the questions I want to ask, so I'm going to have you back. Just really fun talking to you, hearing your perspective, hearing kind of your life story. And again, there's other questions about your personal journey that I want to ask. We'll have to get into that some other time, but thanks for taking the time to do this.
Tom, it's been a real pleasure to meet you and have a good conversation with you today. I've loved every minute of it. So it's nice to be on the other side as opposed to, I've done a few podcasts myself. So it's nice to, just to have a chat and get to know someone and have the questions directed at me instead of thinking of questions. So yeah, it's been a nice change, and definitely anytime you want me back on for part two, happy to come on. As you know, I can probably speak for hours on these topics. So it's a passion of mine. So I tend to feel that I can, always provide a lot of value, and I enjoy talking about it. So I'm sure you could easily fill another hour and a half of us having a good chat about it. So anytime you want me on, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to oblige. So
Fantastic. Well, take care now.
thanks, Tom.
There were a couple of things that Neil talked about that really resonated with me. First was that the biggest advantage about using a bike to help me lose fat is that I'll stay with it because I truly love to ride. I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that I did 4 hours of riding. There are very few activities that I would do that long. I do believe there are other factors that make the bike a great tool for maintaining a healthy weight, but I have to agree with Neil that compliance is the biggest one. The second thing is when Neil openly discussed the psychological aspects that can lead to snacking. I'm beginning to learn a lot about the emotional drivers behind a lot of my food choices. I can believe that a lot of complex psychological dynamics contributed to my current health challenges. My ability to better myself from an emotional and psychological perspective will certainly play a pivotal role in my ability to continue to get healthy and prevent slipping back into habits that contributed to my current metabolic dysfunction. Next week is the start of National Bike Month. I hope that you find some fun and unique ways to celebrate cycling throughout May. Maybe some new and challenging adventures are waiting next month for you. And remember, age is just a gear change.